So years ago when I first started, it was one of those things where if you had tattoos, you had to have them covered up on the job. I'm sure many of my folks out here that's working in tech, they probably remember when that was a thing where if you had tattoos, you couldn't have them showing. So let's break this down today. So when we look at confidence, you hear me talk about it a lot. Like I said, a lot of people may call it imposter syndrome, but basically confidence comes when you're sure of yourself. When you're solving problems, you don't kind of hesitate when making decisions. You got your decision and you roll with it. You know what I'm saying? Even if you don't know everything, you always want to be confident in how you approach an issue and how you approach a situation, because a lot of times you're working with other analysts and they're not going to go behind someone or allow someone to make a change if they're not confident in that decision. So, and this, like I said, no matter how you look. So if you're not confident in your decisions, like I said, the people you work with, they're not going to trust you. So it's all about the first thing, like I said, is being confident. And this is like when you're solving issues, because 9 times out of 10, everyone in tech, unless you're a software developer or something like that, even then, you're still solving issues. You're solving other folks' issues. So, you know what I'm saying, your appearance really doesn't matter as long as you can get those issues resolved. And then the next thing that I think matters more than your appearance is how you communicate. So being able to work well with other IT professionals, being able to work well with other employees at your particular organization, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to be solving issues. And sometimes those issues may be you working with other IT professionals to resolve an issue, or it may be where you have a ticket and you need to contact an employee who's having that issue, who had help desk to send that ticket in. So this goes a long way, being able to communicate. So whether you're explaining an issue to a user or you're collaborating on a project, good communication, this is going to make you stand out and make you easy to work with. For me, I always try to be a good team player where, I'm able to work with anyone. You're going to come across those people that may have prejudged you from the beginning, but usually after you work with them for a little bit, they may start to kind of notice that they judge you wrong. Like I said, a lot of times, like I said, for me, I came into the industry, I had braids. Even when I got into my first operations role, I still had braids then. So like I said, I didn't really get treated any differently. Not that I noticed, but I did notice as I was there for some years, my reputation kind of preceded myself to where everyone knew that, okay, if you're working with Mike, you know that I'm going to go the extra mile. So a lot of times just being able to communicate, being able to work well with others, I think that's going to go a lot further and mean more than your appearance. And then being consistent is one of those skills that I think that will matter more for you than your appearance. So it's also, like I said, being known for showing up, being known to do what you say you're going to do. You know what I'm saying? This goes a long way, because in this industry, a lot of times other teams may be relying on you. It may be a project you're working on that is a group project. You may be on the networking team, but you're collaborating with the server team and also their security team. So when you're on those projects, they're going to need someone that they can depend on. So like I said, I think being consistent, knowing that you're going to show up, knowing that, if we need to hop on a call at this time, that you're going to show up, you're going to be there, that's going to take you a lot further than your appearance will. So like I said, I really don't think that, in my eyes, I don't think that the dreads will be an issue for you. And then the next reason I think that your appearance wouldn't matter is because you have the skills to pay the bills. So, you know what I'm saying? If you got the skills, you're consistent, you can communicate, you got confidence, then they're basically the total package. So in tech, yeah, you got to have those soft skills, but it's a superpower to have those soft skills as well as those technical skills. So if you have those technical skills also, like I said, a lot of times it's not going to matter how your appearance is. Now I can't say that you need to go in there, dress like you're going to the club. I don't really know anywhere you can do that at. But like I said, you can be yourself. So for me, some of my coworkers I've ran into, so I had coworkers that was full of tattoos, but basically had sleeves, where anyone that knows about sleeves, when you had the tattoo that covers your whole arm. I done seen some coworkers that had both arms covered, to where years ago when I first started in the industry, now that would be like 10, 11, 12 years ago now. So years ago when I first started, it was one of those things where if you had tattoos, you had to have them covered up on the job. I'm sure many of my folks out here that's working in tech, they probably remember when that was a thing where if you had tattoos, you couldn't have them showing. But nowadays, a lot of times, most companies, they don't really care how you show up. Long as you're getting the job done, and long as if let's say you got to go to a meeting or you got to go to somewhere where, let's say, the CEO is coming in. A lot of times then it's common courtesy for people to dress up, because that, okay, the CEO is coming. But on normal days, they're technically not going to really care about, how you're looking, whether you got dreads or not. The main thing is if you do got dreads, you want to keep them neat. That's one thing often I cared about back when I had hair. As you can see, I miss my hair, man. I miss it, bro. But back when I had hair, one of the things was when I would get my hair braided, I always kept it neat. I always try to keep it neat and professional. But just because, it was one of my standards that I wanted to uphold within myself. And then also, when you're on a job, let's say you're working for a Fortune 500 company, a lot of times you never know who you're going to run into. You could run into that supervisor that you didn't know that's over this other department that you're trying to get into. Let's say you meet the supervisor that's over security that you never met before. That first appearance is everything. So like I said, you don't want to come across what I like to call sloppy looking. You always want to kind of keep it nice and neat, keep it cleaned up. But like I said, I've seen people from all walks. I've seen, like I said, the tattoos. I've been in workplaces where people had dreads. I've been in workplaces where people, their whole style was, I like to call it a hippie style, where, they kind of have the real baggy pants and things like that. I've seen that. And like I said, I haven't seen anywhere where that was an issue for anyone. Quick pause. I'd like to introduce you to the Log Files. The Log Files is a weekly newsletter to help you start your IT career with practical advice and tips powered by yours truly. I launched it in the beginning of the year. It's packed with actionable advice, resources, and insights to kickstart your IT journey. The link is in the description as well as pinned in the comments. So don't miss out. Now back to the episode. And then the next tip when it comes to being professional in tech is basically you want to be yourself but be presentable. So like I said, the first impression is always your best impression. So once you land a role, you'll learn that company's culture. You'll learn the dress code. Some places may have a casual Fridays.